A lot of plants, we're just kind of letting them kind of decide if they want to be there or not. So plant in abundance, and the ones that start to thrive, you nurture them. So we're not actually gardening in the conventional sense, we're more just looking after the plants and nurturing them.
We're just here to help form things so that we have a food forest which is mimicking what the natural forest does, where you have your 7 different layers of your natural forest, but you've got your 7 different layers of the plants that you put in to produce the food that you want.
Brilliant.
And it includes medicinals as well. I mean, we've got
sea buckthorn, we've got a broccoli and a butternut and a tea plant right there.
So this is our food forest. So this is part of our food forest.
Now, this part of our land here was actually previously impacted as well, even though we are surrounded by arbutus trees or what can be called madrone trees. There was actually a lot of invasives all through this area. And the prior owner had done some gardening, like there's daffodils everywhere, irises everywhere, and little pockets of soil here and there. So this is truly nook and cranny gardening but it's a southern exposure.
Yes, precious,
Yeah.
which is precious, right.
And these arbutus trees, what we can do is we've taken all the invasive species out of here, like the blackberries and the thistles and all those kind of things, and the broom, lots of Scotch broom in here. And so now what we can do is we can selectively thin the arbutus here and there as we want to let more light in. And that arbutus wood is very high in BTUs, and we can use it to do a bunch of our cooking with. And we can look at that later.
It doesn't have a lot of flame, and so it's great coals. So what we do is we basically coppice it. So for example,
Coppice.
Right. So you basically cut it off, and it just keeps growing
I
back
see.
up.
I see. So you've cut the tree, but you've left some branches, and
Exactly.
these will grow.
And so what we have is
So you're doing perennial firewood.
Absolutely.
perennial firewood. Exactly.
To cook food.
So fire food. Right.
And the ones that are living, the ones that we still have growing up tall, they are supporting some of our vines, which being in October, our vines have now started to lose their leaves, but we have Arctic kiwis, we have all kinds of things.
This kind of thing.
That's a native plant.
It's a native honeysuckle. It's a nice pollinator.
But that's an example of a vine,
Yeah, we've got an
growing on the
Arctic kiwi in behind here. It's losing its leaves right now. It's good to -40. And it's a little round kiwi that's not fuzzy, that's like a grape, but a little bigger than a grape. And
we also have things such as Camellia sinensis, which is black tea.
Nice.
we had our first cup of black tea 2
Oh,
days ago.
Congratulations.
It was so good.
But
I'm still buzzing from the caffeine.
But the whole thing is intense in the sense that, like, if you just take a look at the little square patch behind you, so we've got our firewood for our cob oven, we've got some black tea.
Black tea over
behind
here.
Anne.
Oh, I
We've
see.
got some, I believe that here we've got one of our zucchinis.
And look, Gord, it's October 10th. And look, they're still
nice big
producing
zucchini.
zucchinis.
Yep.
Now, this is an example of a microclimate because of the protection.
South facing, you've
Yep.
got some rock to hold some of the warmth. Is
Got
that-
some
is
rock.
that-
Yep.
Exactly. We're also on a hillside, so when the frosts do come, this is less likely to get hit by the frost because it slides
That's
down,
right.
so you don't have a frost pocket.
Oh.
And so, you've got your Andean potatoes, you've got
Comfrey.
comfrey, we've got
Tree.
autumn olive.
That's a nitrogen fixer.
Yep. So what it's doing is, rather than having to continue to bring in nitrogen, we'll put in autumn olives or Russian olives or black locusts. They will put the nitrogen into the ground. Through the mycorrhizal networks, we'll be able to feed nitrogen to things like the goji berries and the other plants around it. Also, one of the things that we're doing is arbutus, which is the type that we have here. We've also been planting some other types of arbutus unindo, which is a strawberry tree where the berries are actually the size of strawberries and edible. So we're making this all a perennial food forest, and then as it matures, we just started this 8 months ago. So this is in 8 months, this little section here. As it matures, we will change our eating habits to go foraging. Rather than doing the average foraging that you might do in the annual garden, we're now able to expand that into here. So we'll have our fava beans, which we picked up this year, and it just goes on and on. There's about 100 to, 120 different species of plants that we've just started growing.
And part of what you're experimenting with, if I understand right, is trying to find out what works well here, and particularly as the climate changes, some that will be more suited as time goes on.
Exactly.
Is that
Yeah,
right?
and a lot of plants, we're just kind of letting them kind of decide if they want to be there or not. So plant in abundance, and the ones that start to thrive, you nurture them. So we're not actually gardening in the conventional sense, we're more just looking after the plants and nurturing them.
It's like being a horticulturalist.
I was going to say,
It's
you're
not quite-
tending gardens,
Exactly.
so you're
You're-
helping them along.
It's not agriculture.
It's not
and
farming.
It's not, and it's, you know, and it's not sort of hunter-gatherer, but it's kind of like gathering. But it's right in that mix. And basically what we're doing is we're just here to help form things so that we have a food forest, which is mimicking what the natural forest does, where you have your, you know, your 7 different layers of your natural forest, but you've got your 7 different layers of the plants that you put in to produce the food that you want.
Brilliant.
And it
So-
includes medicinals as well. I mean, we've
Yeah.
got
We've
sea buckthorn.
sea buckthorn, we've got a broccoli and a butternut and a tea plant right there. You're looking at all of them right there. And that broccoli will live to be 3 years old there.
Yeah, broccoli. We know broccoli's not an annual. Broccoli, we've been eating broccoli for that's 3, 4 years old. So what we do is we just clip them off, and it sends out new shoots, and we just keep the roots in the soil.
You remind me, I'd heard that many plants respond to being cut. They like to be cut or harvested or nipped back or whatever. That it tells them grow more.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's a happy thing for the broccoli
It is.
to be able to live
Yeah.
that long.
And you never disturb the soil by doing that. You let the soil and the life in the soil build up. And that's what's important for the health of any kind of an ecosystem.
Sure,
is the
because
soil.
tilling just breaks things down. So you're taking the rainwater off the roof where the squashes grow. I mean, from where the squashes grow, coming down and helping to bring fertility, so nitrogen to this
To get it going,
region.
and once it's going, which next year, actually, I suspect next year it will be going because it's doing a lot better than we expected this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like this is October 10th, right? And all the
It's-
squash are
it's-
dying back and everything's starting to die back, but it's still got a lot of beauty to it.
With that abundance, and as thinking about the changing climate, in here we've also got things that we've got Szechuan pepper trees, so we can grind our own pepper. We have Spanish olive trees, or European olive trees. We've got pomegranates. So trying to really build in the plants and give them a foothold before the climate is there, so we can protect them for a couple of years. 'Cause I kind of think it's changing, you know.
It
really
is
quick.
changing
changing
dramatically. The
Yeah.
rain
Quickly.
patterns are changing, and our springs used to always be that they were quite wet, which was really easy to get seeds to germinate in the annual garden. But we're finding that we're having to irrigate in May and June because we're having these dry, hot spells when it's normally warmer and cool for germinating. So it's getting a little tougher to be predictable with that kind of gardening.
Yeah.
But perennials, they're tough because they're established. They don't have to start from a little seedling every year.
And I also see is that because you've got, you know, this kind of activity, you've got basins where the moisture can collect.
Yep,
Yeah.
And so they're self-watering to some extent.
to
really.
some
To
extent.
some extent. I mean, yeah.
We do use rainwater down here.
Well, just when the plants are young, but once they're established, they won't need
Deeper
irrigation.
roots to be able to do that.
Exactly.
That's right.
They'll be tough.
This looks like you've got some water tanks here.
Yeah, this is kind of like water central here. So what we have is we've got a combination of water systems. Underneath this platform, we have one of our 4 rainwater storage tanks, which
From your house?
from our house.
Okay, right.
And this one here is dedicated to doing irrigation inside the food forest. On the other side is one of the 4 different gray water systems we have in the house. And so when we built, we had to finish the completion of a septic system, which we don't use because we have composting toilets. But what we did is we reused one of the tanks, put an aerator into it, and so the gray water from the house can go into this tank and be oxygenated, and it's used to irrigate down by the chicken coop. It's used to irrigate some more of the food forest that we
Okay,
haven't walked
okay,
through.
Right.
And then obviously we've got the different plants, and we've got bees as well.
Bees.
Yes.
Bees.
We've got some bees. We've got 2 different types of hives. We've got what type of hives is it?
Langstroth,
That's a Langstroth?
conventional hive.
Okay,
Langstroth.
we just say conventional hive there. But unfortunately last year, our hive died. It was actually a swarm arrived and actually chose this piece of land and moved into that hive, but it was a late swarm, and so the queen wasn't healthy and it didn't make it through the winter. And so we were really sad, losing the
Yeah.
bees. And this year, Gord had built a top bar hive, and it had sat vacant for 2 years. No one had ever moved into it before. And then early this spring, another swarm appeared, and they moved into the top bar hive. So they're in there right now, doing their thing.
Happiness.
Yeah.
Happiness. And so
And
they've
I saw one out
chosen-
yesterday.
They've chosen to come here rather than having to go catch a swarm. Because
Right.
I was, one year I had my swarm gear in the car ready to catch a swarm, and then Ann told me to clean up my mess. And I put it away, and then 6 days later is when we got the first hive.
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. It's like
And,
they heard you
Yeah.
wanting
So-
them to be here.
Yeah, the local beekeepers are kind of a little bit annoyed because the swarms are coming to us and we don't have to buy them or we don't have to collect them.
It's like the animals on your cold storage shed. It's like you're calling them in, right? And the flower. I mean, you've got a lot of things here for them to
Yeah.
attract them.
You
so-
build it and they'll come. Isn't that the old saying?
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. So I want to see some of the other beds.
Well, let's go look at our curvy bed.
Curvy?
You'll know what I mean when we get there.
These really are little nooks and crannies everywhere. I'm just, a little thing here, a little thing there. It's really, oh, look at this. What fun.
It is a curvy bed.
It is. It is. You just got so carried away doing cob for your house that you're sort of doing it everywhere, it seems like. So why a curvy bed?
Well,
And what's it for?
We've started to fall in love with raised beds, and for many reasons. It really, it creates a microhabitat by doing a raised bed because it gets it up off the ground and it heats up sooner in the spring. It also, because this bed is a large thermal mass, it's actually made out of concrete that we hand formed it ourselves. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But it holds the heat of the day. It actually gets very warm because of southern exposure here. And this year we grew a whole bunch of watermelon.
Oh,
So you gotta love watermelons in our
Fabulous.
climate.
Watermelons
Yep.
in our climate. I know, it's not like
I
California.
mean, California, you get them everywhere, but
I
it's
know.
I know.
like, so you have a little hot planter.
Exactly. And we still got zucchinis coming in that bed right there. There's still some zucchinis hanging off of it. Normally those would be dead. Unless you create the microclimates for things that they can stay a little bit warm, you can actually extend your season a couple of weeks on both sides, the spring and the fall.
Interesting. What's
And-
with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And right now I've got some more winter greens planted in here because it's that microhabitat again to be just that little bit warmer.
Okay.
And it's super strong. You can actually stand on it.
Well, I don't want to try that one necessarily at this point. But now there's another little whatever.
Yep. We've got another
Piece
raised
of-
bed over there. And we did that with a bunch of old concrete blocks.
That's
and
a nice use of that.
Yeah, we really like that. And but we wanted to make some more raised beds without having to buy so much concrete. Those are
Yes.
expensive
Yeah.
and they have a big carbon footprint. And so we came up with a way to build a raised bed that was permanent and the bugs won't eat it, it won't fall apart, and very little concrete. So very low carbon footprint and yet increase.
Because it's very skinny.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's-
as you get older, you don't have to bend over
yes,
so much.
And-
yes.
And
Yes.
again, because we're a nook and cranny and not all of our ground is flat, by being able to build your bed in place very quickly, it allows you to then work with the contours that are always changing. So if you're having to work around rock, if you're having to
Oh,
work in
yeah.
tight, narrow
Sure,
areas.
sure.
And so this was an experiment, and this now this experiment went so well, we can use it to replace some of our older beds that are wood that aren't, as robust. So it
Yeah, we
just-
have some old cedar beds like over there, and they're falling apart already, and they're only a few years old. And so you have to keep rebuilding it all the time. That's not a very good use of resources.
not falling apart, they're composting in place.
The
It's
composting place.
habitat.
There we go. And what I see with the way you've shaped this curve is like there's places for things, reaching as
You
well
can
as
reach
things
everywhere.
that extend, like all of your watermelon
Yeah,
vines.
not only is it beautiful, you can
Yeah.
you can reach everywhere, which is you
which
gotta
is,
like
which
that.
is nice. And I like, raised beds make total sense to me.
And behind us, Janea, you know that sweet potato we showed you?
Monster sweet potato?
This is where we grew the sweet
Oh,
potatoes
wow. In a big mound.
in a big mound. So this was kind of like a what we call like a mini hugelkultur mound. So we have basically a bunch of woody scrap substances buried deep, and then what we do is we pile organics on top of it and some soil, and we let it compost in place. And the woody substance has a lot of fungus to it
Okay.
and a lot of moisture holding capacity to it. And year 3, which was last year, it's come down a lot in size. We're actually planted the sweet potatoes into here with a little cold frame on top of it, and that's where we got the big sweet potato. And then this becomes soil now that we can use to top up the beds, and we can restart and make a new. So it's kind of like an advanced composting system where we can make the soil that tops up our beds.
I see. Okay. And you call that hugel culture?
Hugel culture, and hugel culture comes from, I guess, Austria, most notably a fellow by the name of Sepp Holzer. And what he does it at a much bigger scale where he uses full logs, and he'll make them 5-6 feet high. And just the size of the mounds covered with dirt and organics with these logs underneath, the size of the mound has two sides of it, which give you different climates for different plants depending on which side of the mound that you plant them on. And over time, it slowly comes in on itself.
Right, right. But because it has air spaces, at least as a beginning, it's got ways for roots and nutrients and stuff to travel.
That's right.
Yep.
Rather than compacted soil or soil that you have to uncompact. Brilliant.
Yep. In this
Brilliant.
particular case, though, we did have some mice come in there, and that's why we had to harvest the sweet potatoes a little bit early. But that's why next year we're actually thinking of doing sweet potatoes now up on top of that container roof,
The squash
the
roof.
squash roof.
I can just see it now, vines with monster sweet potatoes coming down.
The problem is that now we're going to have to put the squash
little-
on that roof up there.
I see little props. You're going to have little stilts holding up all of these heavy vegetables.
We wouldn't be able to see out the windows, Gord. That would be fun, though.
It would be fun.
You got to have fun with your food.
Well, it looks like and they're having fun right in turn with you. Right. This is a nice big flat area. I bet you're using it to the max, this region here.
We did do some concrete blocks in here to make what we call the keyhole garden. And that has worked very well for creating more raised beds. But I did plant a bunch of cabbages in here, but unfortunately the rabbits ate all my cabbages. So I've set a live trap in here.
Fortunately, we're having bunny for Thanksgiving.
So part of the story is the wild bunnies that you catch
Yep.
become part of your food source.
Yeah, it was really, really hard in the beginning to do that, to actually kill another creature and actually eat it. But what we've really learned through growing our own food is there's always a cost of food, whether it's broccoli you buy organically from the store or farm. You know, we always take away habitat from something else to put our food in. But if we can grow food in a way that actually still allows rabbits to share this land with us and all the other creatures to live with us, and yet we pick one off once in a while that was eating our cabbages, I think it's actually a very sustainable way to feed ourselves.
Actually, it feels to me that it's a return of sorts to the hunting,
Yep.
gathering that our earliest roots. That's how we humans came to be here.
Yeah.
And that rabbit had a good life and ate all your cabbages. So,
Look at this.
So you know, there's some reciprocity going on in here.
It's kind of like the bees. We've made the environment,
And so the rabbits
everything
come.
has come here. And you might call that entrapment, but we just call it live trapping.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and part of what you're saying here is that we have not, you're not doing monoculture. You're not scraping the land and killing off everything. You know, you're working within what you have in your area
Yeah.
and sharing it.
Everybody's sharing.
Yeah.
Sharing it. So
And
I've got to ask who this is, what these are, because these are interesting. that you've
Those are
got up there.
tomatillos.
Tomatillo.
Yes, they're related to the tomatoes and the peppers. They are a nightshade vegetable, and they're incredibly tough plants. They're not a tomato this time of year would already be dying and getting blight and all kinds of things like that unless it's undercover or in a greenhouse. But these little tomatillos are fantastic, and they have all different. They have a little paper shell on them.
Are they pretty? And they're firm. They're firmer than
Yep.
Well,
And the ripe ones are quite yellow, but you can eat them at any stage. Yeah, that one's
Those are
coming
good.
along. Yeah. Oh, and I usually pick them up whenever they fall. There's a good one in there.
it's sort of tart and sweet at the same time.
Yeah. And you make salsas and stuff out of there. We've even been fermenting the salsas, which is a really neat thing to do. They're very good.
Yeah. Now, does this get planted every year?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have a lot of volunteers. So what we do is, if the volunteers sprout up here next year, and we have an area that we want to put the tomatillos, we will replace the volunteers in certain spots. But the volunteers always do so much better
better.
than anything that we plant.
Really?
It's
really?
that thing we were talking about in the food forest. If something decides where it wants to grow and it naturally starts there and starts thriving, then let it stay.
Let it go
and you
because
work
it
around it.
It
So I
already
don't-
knows that this is a good place for me.
Yeah.
When I first started gardening, I wanted everything in straight lines and rows and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? Nature doesn't like that. You're always fighting it. So just let it do what it wants to do.
The funny thing is, visually, it looks organized when it's in straight rows and straight lines, but ecologically, it's in chaos. When it looks like it's in chaos, ecologically, it's in line and in tune with itself.
Yep.
You
like that.
remind me of reading that when the colonizers came to the New World and saw the jungles of North and South America, they didn't see that these were plants being cultivated. Much of it were plants being cultivated, just as you're doing right here. You're replicating that here. They couldn't see it. They just saw the chaos, and instead, of course, it was people working right with nature with least effort.
Yep.
Just as
With least effort.
like you're doing. So speaking of least effort, actually I would love for people to see what you've done with your greenhouse system.
This is our patio out here with our cob oven. It's actually built into the north wall of the greenhouse.
It's a cozy little space.
Oh, we love this spot. So with the oven, we actually fire it up every 2 weeks. We, it's probably still warm in there.
Oh, it is.
Is
yeah,
it?
Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah,
We had a fire, what, on Sunday? Sunday
4 or
was
5
cob
days
oven
Four or
day.
5 days ago?
Yeah, yeah.
So what we do is we have the big fire in there, well, a little fire actually, and then you add the little pieces of arbutus that we take from the food forest the year before, and have a fire in there for about, what, 4 or 5 hours, 6
Yep.
hours? Just keep it small, and the smoke comes out the top, the air comes in the bottom. And when we're ready to start cooking, we take the coals out and put them in the bucket, and we start with pizzas. And we've been doing a couple of different types of pizzas, a wheat crust as well as a wheatless crust, and put them in there, and they cook in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
Really
That's got to
fast.
be really hot.
And
Yeah.
they're thick crust. I mean, they're thick pizzas. It's
Yeah.
hot. Yeah.
With all kinds of garden toppings on it. Like, it's really neat, and they're fabulous. And then we put some bread in. How many loaves of bread did you do? 6 or whatever?
Yeah, I usually try and do between 6 and 8 loaves of
Yeah.
bread.
Wow.
That's good for 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, and then my favorite part is to put in 3 big pots of beans. And then we put the door back on and close them in there overnight. And actually, the next day at supper time, I'll take them out and I'll make some kind of dinner from beans.
That's
With
a lot
gloves
of
on.
I mean, still hot.
Yeah, I still need gloves to take them out.
That's a lot of heat that this is holding.
It is, and what we've done is we've done this a little bit differently than the usual cob oven. Is normally there's an insulative layer in there to keep the heat so it doesn't radiate out past the rest of the mass. But what we've done in this one is we've made the whole oven cob and we've built it into the back of the greenhouse. So in the wintertime, that heat that resides in there, some of that heat will actually transfer through into the greenhouse and provide heat into the greenhouse in the wintertime.
So it's all connected.
Okay. I mean, it's similar to what you're doing with the concrete over there on your raised beds. It
Yep.
holds some of the heat, which makes some things extends their growing life.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, because this is the sweetest little spot with cob oven and the benches.
This is actually insulation. It's not a. We just make it look like a bench. This is actually
Oh.
recycled dock foam.
I'm sitting on insulation.
Not
You're
that one,
not.
but this one.
This one.
This here, what we've got is the greenhouse is behind us. It's dug into the hillside.
And it's
so,
insulated with recycled dock foam.
and so what this is we got dock foam that goes down another 2 feet down below this bench into the ground, and we've just built a bench on top of it. But what it does is it allows the heat from the greenhouse to come in. It doesn't seep out the back wall, but it makes the heat dive down into the ground where we've got rammed earth tires that are the base of the greenhouse. And so we can actually start to store more heat in the summertime into the hillside.
Oh.
And
Kind of like
so,
an earth ship. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say a little earth ship
Yeah.
of part of your structure.
Yeah, it's the same kind of concept.
Wow. So your greenhouse is really not only getting heat from sun, but also from the wood
oven.
heat.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
it's well insulated with the earth.
And because it's an earthen greenhouse as well, what happens is it also doesn't get super mildewy and full of moisture inside because the walls absorb the excess moisture.
All the clay walls inside the
right.
greenhouse absorb the extra moisture, so you've got a lot less mold problems than you have in a conventional greenhouse.
That has
And we'll-
plastic or let's see.
I'll
I'd
show
like
you.
to see that.
Oh,
it's a glass house.
Yeah, it's all made of recycled glass and some glass blocks and door. And
Yeah.
our neighbor was redoing all the glass in his house. So
What a find.
yes.
Oh, it's nice. It's warm. Ooh,
Ooh, nice and warm
this
in
is
here.
good.
Feels good.
Wow, it is warm in here.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you've got tomatoes still growing. I can see that they'll just keep on going.
Yeah, I just
And,
picked a bunch yesterday actually.
and,
Brought a bunch in.
Peppers.
Yeah, we can get some really nice peppers in here too because it gets so hot up there, being up high in the greenhouse. We can grow
Wow.
most things in containers in here, and because of the clays, we don't have a lot of the humidity and mold problems.
The clay walls.
Yeah,
Clay
the
walls.
clay
There,
walls
yes.
and the clay plasters. And we've got our lemon tree in here.
Oh, boy, that's amazing to have lemon tree this
Look at
far
all the
north.
lemons.
Yep.
Oh, and the
Yeah.
flowers. Wow, is that ever nice? Have you ever, the first time I smelled the lemon blossom was amazing.
That's like honeysuckle. That
Isn't
is
that
so fragrant.
beautiful?
So sweet.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And ginger, this is our ginger plant.
I mean, these are tropical, semi-tropical
Yeah,
plants.
as long as
right?
they don't freeze, they make it through the winter, and this greenhouse doesn't freeze.
Oh wow!
We've-
I would not expect that.
Even
to
if
be
it's
true.
-15 outside,
Doesn't
it
freeze.
doesn't freeze in here.
Well done. Well
Yeah.
done.
And so, and also our propagation plants. So
Just starting?
Just starting. So the Siberian ginseng, mulberries, fuzzy kiwis, Arctic kiwis,
Tea plants.
Camellia sinensis.
So these are babies that you're
Yep.
starting, and then they'll go out there somewhere
Yep.
in the next season.
Yep. And next year this will be planted outside full time as well.
And how will it survive in the winter out there? I mean, will it be strong enough?
If you
or-
keep the soil dry,
If you keep it dry in the wintertime, it can handle the cold.
Okay.
So it's about making sure it's just got a cover over it to keep the water off in the wintertime.
Yeah, you're right, Connor. Well, you know, you have a wondrous jungle. You have a wondrous food jungle. That's really what it feels like. All the way from, I'm just sort of thinking, I mean, you've done truly nooks and crannies, just where you have a little warmth here, or a little wall there, or a little flat here. I mean, it's like enterprising, innovative.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit more work. This nook and cranny was, 20 yards of soil that was taken out. But
Because
Yeah,
we're down,
Gordon
we're
did it
down
all
in
by
the ground. And you can attest to every one of those.
I
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
he does a lot of digging. He's wore out a few shovels.
And so next time we visit, and you've got the aquaculture, we'll just see the next development. Thank you.
Thank
Grand
you.
tour. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
thank you. You're watching Peak Moment with Gordon and Baird and their jungle of abundance. Join us next time.